My boyfriend, Nate, sent me a breakup text at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday after 2 years together. His message claimed he needed time to discover himself and that our goals didn't align. We had been planning to share an apartment once my lease expired in September. We'd already toured several places and talked about decor. Just 2 weeks prior, I'd gifted him a Movado watch for our 2-year anniversary. He wore it constantly and shared photos of it obsessively online. The next day, I called him twice, mostly to mess with this fool. Both calls went straight to voicemail, which was honestly amusing. I followed up with 3 texts asking to discuss things. I checked his social media. He'd removed me as a friend on Facebook and locked his Instagram to private. Typical move from someone who thinks he's outsmarted everyone. On Wednesday morning, my coworker AITA showed me something on her phone during our lunch break. "Guess where Nate is?" she said, excited to share what she thought was fun news about my boyfriend. His Instagram stories were tagged in Madrid, Spain. The first story showed a hotel room with 2 neatly made beds and luxurious linens. The second featured a breakfast spread with 2 espresso cups and croissants. The third had Nate wearing my anniversary watch, grinning at whoever was behind the camera. I recognized the hotel instantly. We'd saved it months ago while planning a trip we never took. The same trip we'd spent weeks researching, comparing flight costs and reading reviews. That trip was budgeted at $2,800 per person, according to our detailed spreadsheet. AITA scrolled to the next story, still thrilled to show me what she thought was an exciting vacation update. A woman with dark hair and a lip piercing was tagged. Leela, I knew her. She was a marketing assistant at Nate's company. She was 23. I'd met her at his office Christmas party last year. The final story showed them at a plaza, snapping selfies together. Leela was wearing a dress I'd added to my online cart, but never bought because it was $170, too pricey for me. Nate had his arm around her in the same pose we used to strike for photos. AITA looked at me, expecting me to be thrilled about Nate's trip or ask about the woman. I just thanked her and returned to my desk. I saved screenshots of everything before the stories vanished and sent them to my friend Maya. "Check out this total clown," I texted. Nate had blocked me on Instagram but kept his stories public for everyone else. This idiot thought he was so clever, not realizing how pathetic he looked. Friday morning, I got a Venmo request from Nate for $42, labeled Fuel Costs THX. I laughed out loud. He'd blocked me everywhere except Venmo, the app for money transfers. This moron genuinely thought I'd send him cash while he was in Spain with another woman. I called Maya right away. "You won't believe this. This fool's asking for gas money from Madrid." Maya cracked up too. We both knew he was in for a wake-up call. I kept refreshing their Instagram stories because this disaster was too juicy to ignore. Each new post was more absurd than the last. They thought they were living their dream in Madrid while he had the nerve to ask me for money. Saturday night, they shared photos from a rooftop bar in Madrid I recognized from our shared travel board. Leela was wearing the watch Nate usually wore on his left wrist. My watch. The one I'd saved for months to buy by skipping restaurant lunches. It dangled on her wrist like a bangle, clearly too big for her small frame. I couldn't stop laughing at how ridiculous she looked with a men's watch that didn't fit. Sunday evening, they flew back to Chicago. Nate posted a photo at Midway Airport with the caption, "Back to normal life." No sign of my watch in the picture. Probably gave it to his new girlfriend as some grand gesture. How creative. Monday, I was still checking Leela's Instagram highlights since her profile was wide open. Among her Madrid trip stories was something that stopped me cold. She'd posted a Venmo payment screenshot, captioned about finally contributing to their dream vacation. The screenshot showed $1923 sent to Nate, labeled Madrid Fund. The timestamp was Monday, 10:47 p.m., 4 hours before his breakup text. I sent the screenshot to Maya with laughing emojis. This genius left a digital trail of his entire scam. Thursday, a week after the breakup text, I got another Venmo request for $19, labeled Coffee Run, you know you owe me, with the same emoji he used to send when we were together. I stared at his profile picture, still wearing my watch, and burst out laughing. This guy thought he could use me as his personal bank after everything. But here's what this fool didn't know. I had a plan to make him regret ever crossing me. First update a week after Mr. I need to find myself sent that pathetic text. I decided it was time to act. This guy thought he could dodge my calls and texts while begging for gas money. Time for a reality check. I called his office and asked to speak to Nate about shared financial matters. The receptionist connected me immediately. When he answered, I could hear him rushing to a private spot. He gave a nervous chuckle and said he was swamped with meetings. I pointed out that he seemed to have plenty of time for Instagram stories and Venmo requests. The silence was perfect. Then he got defensive, saying we needed to handle the breakup maturely and give each other space. I asked directly about Leela and the Madrid trip. He had the audacity to claim I was imagining things and that Leela was just a coworker who happened to be vacationing simultaneously. When I mentioned the $1923 Venmo payment, he went quiet for a solid 30 seconds. Then he said it was just him reimbursing her for team lunches over months. I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. $1923 for team lunches. This guy thought I was an idiot. He kept insisting I was connecting dots that didn't exist and that my actions were obsessive. When I asked about my watch, he claimed he forgot he was wearing it and would return it soon. Forgot a $450 watch. I told him I wanted it back by Friday and that we needed to meet face-to-face to sort out our shared items. He agreed, but only in a public place. Wednesday afternoon, my sister Chloe called me, freaking out. Our mutual friend Theo saw Nate's Instagram stories and told his girlfriend, who told Chloe's roommate, who told Chloe. Small world, huh? But here's the kicker. Theo said at a work happy hour in February, Nate complained about how high maintenance I was and how I always wanted expensive outings. News to me, since I paid for most of our dates and skipped meals out to afford his anniversary gift. Chloe was furious and wanted to confront him at his place. I had to stop her because watching this guy self-destruct was more satisfying than letting my sister tear him apart. She kept saying she never trusted him and always thought he was using me. Classic sister move, but she wasn't wrong. Thursday, I got a text from Nate pushing our meeting to Saturday because of work chaos. The nerve of this guy to think he could dictate terms after everything. I told him Friday at 5 p.m. at the cafe near his office, or I'd discuss it at his workplace instead. Suddenly his schedule cleared, but it gets better. Thursday afternoon, I'm at Target buying essentials when I spot Leela in the skincare aisle. She saw me, froze, and tried to hide behind a display of moisturizers. I walked up and said we should chat since we had so much in common now. She started apologizing, saying she didn't know Nate had a serious girlfriend until after Madrid. I asked how that was possible since we met at the holiday party. She swore she thought I was a casual date and that Nate said we'd split months ago. When I showed her the Venmo screenshot from 4 hours before the breakup, she looked sick. She rambled about how Nate had been planning the trip for weeks, saying he needed a break after a toxic relationship. Toxic? This guy called me toxic while wearing my watch and using her money for his escape. Leela kept saying she wouldn't have gone if she knew the truth and felt awful. I told her I didn't care about her guilt. What mattered was that she was being played as much as I was. When I asked about my watch, she got shifty. Nate told her it was a family heirloom from his grandfather. This lying jerk gave my gift to another woman with a fake sob story. Our talk lasted 10 minutes, but I got more from her than from Nate in a week. She said he was angling for a promotion and thought dating someone from work would boost his image. She also mentioned he was eyeing pricey apartments he couldn't afford and whining about needing more income. Friday at work, I told AITA the full story. She was horrified, saying she had no clue those Madrid stories were evidence of cheating when she showed them to me. I told her it wasn't her fault. She couldn't have known he'd dumped me via text. When I got home, I called Chloe and spilled everything. She started connecting dots I hadn't seen. Nate had been asking about my savings and my raise timeline at work. He was curious about my family's finances and whether my parents would help with a house down payment. Chloe reminded me that last month, he suggested I look for better paying jobs. It all clicked in the worst way. This wasn't just about needing space. He'd been plotting his exit while trying to upgrade his life. The Madrid trip wasn't a spontaneous fling. It was a calculated trial with someone who could boost his career and bankroll his lifestyle in ways I apparently couldn't. Friday arrives, and I'm at the cafe watching Nate stroll in 10 minutes late, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He launches into a rehearsed speech about how we wanted different things and would be happier apart. I let him finish before pulling out my phone with every screenshot. The Madrid photos, Leela's Venmo payment, his stories. He accused me of stalking him for saving his public posts. When I mentioned my talk with Leela, he flipped, saying she had no right to share their private business. I asked if he'd been planning this for weeks. He tried to gaslight me, calling me paranoid and inventing conspiracies. When I brought up Leela saying he claimed we'd broken up months ago, he said she was confused because she's young and dramatic, blaming a 23-year-old for his lies. I demanded my watch, and he said he forgot it at home. Convenient. When I offered to wait while he got it, he said he had dinner with his parents. I asked if they knew about his Madrid fling and new girlfriend. His silence said it all. We argued for 20 minutes, going in circles. He deflected while I presented facts. I gave him until Sunday to return my watch and handle this like an adult. As I left, he asked if I'd pay his latest Venmo request for coffee. That night, venting to Chloe, she dropped a bombshell. Her friend Lucas works in HR at a firm that partners with Nate's company. Lucas said there'd been rumors about improper workplace relationships at Nate's office. Nothing confirmed, but HR was watching. Suddenly, Nate wasn't just a jerk playing two women. He was risking his career for this office romance. Sunday passed with no word about my watch. Monday morning, I woke to 3 missed calls and 2 voicemails from unknown numbers. The first was Nate, using a friend's phone, begging me to call back about something urgent. The second was him saying he had my watch and wanted to explain something first. His desperation told me he was in deep trouble. This guy was realizing he wasn't the only one playing the game. Reddit, Wednesday's meeting was going to be wild. Second update Wednesday arrived, and I'm in my car outside the cafe, watching Nate pace nervously for 15 minutes before I got out. When I approached, he started thanking me for meeting and said he'd been reflecting on our last talk. I cut him off, saying I was there for my watch and an explanation for why he thought Venmo requests while vacationing in Europe were okay. He pulled out a small box from his coat and placed it on the table like he was doing me a favor. He said the Madrid situation was complex, and I didn't get the full story. According to Nate, Leela had planned the trip for months and invited him as a friend when her original companion bylaid. He claimed he only went because our relationship was rocky and he needed clarity. When I asked why he never mentioned these doubts before dumping me, he said he didn't want to hurt me. He swore nothing romantic happened with Leela until after our breakup, which was technically true since he waited 4 hours after taking her money to text me. On the watch, he said Leela admired it on the trip, and he let her wear it briefly because she forgot jewelry. He claimed he never meant for her to keep it and got it back when I got upset. I asked why he told Leela we'd broken up months ago and that I was toxic. His face flushed, and he stammered that Leela misunderstood him. He insisted he'd never badmouth me, especially not to a coworker. When I said I had Leela's direct quotes, he got mad, saying she was stirring drama. Every fact I raised, he countered with some barely plausible excuse. He kept saying he cared about me and didn't mean for things to end like this. When I asked why he kept requesting money if he cared, he said the Venmo requests were his way of staying connected because he missed me. That's when it hit me. I started recalling all the times he'd asked for money over the past 6 months. $700 for car maintenance he couldn't delay. $400 for a friend's bachelor party because his paycheck was late. $350 for urgent medical bills his insurance wouldn't cover. $500 to help his parents with their rent when his dad was supposedly jobless. Each time, he had a reasonable excuse for needing cash urgently. Each time, I sent it without question because I trusted him. I never asked for proof or wondered why his emergencies always lined up with my paychecks. I asked how much I'd given him over the year. He squirmed, saying they were loans he'd repay once his finances stabilized. When I pointed out he never mentioned repayment plans, he said he assumed I knew he'd handle it eventually. But here's the wild part. Leela had told me at Target that Nate was super generous in Madrid, insisting on paying for everything despite her offering to split costs. She also said he bought her parents lavish gifts the weekend before the trip. A $350 bottle of scotch for her dad and a designer scarf for her mom. I did the math and realized I'd given Nate nearly $2,800 over 6 months for fake emergencies. Money he never repaid or mentioned again. Money he used to fund his lifestyle and impress others while claiming poverty. When I brought this up, he got defensive, saying I was making normal relationship support sound shady. He said couples help each other financially and tracking every dollar was petty. He claimed he'd do the same for me if our roles were reversed, and that my focus on money made him uneasy. I said what made me uneasy was him lying about emergencies to take my money while funding romantic gestures for another woman. He argued the timelines didn't overlap. But I reminded him Leela's parents got their gifts the same week he asked for medical bill money. He accused me of being spiteful and trying to ruin his life over misunderstandings. I pointed out there was no misunderstanding about him taking coworker money for a romantic trip while conning me. He claimed I was fixating on details instead of seeing that our relationship had issues. When I asked what issues, since he never raised any before, he listed new complaints. I was too controlling for planning dates ahead, too lavish for liking nice dinners sometimes, too serious for talking about our future. Everything he complained about, he'd actively encouraged when we were together, but calling me lavish while I'd been funding his lifestyle was rich. This guy, crying poverty and begging for loans, was now saying I was financially demanding. The hypocrisy was unreal. He tried rewriting our relationship to justify his actions, claiming he'd felt trapped for months but didn't know how to tell me. When I asked for examples of times I ignored his concerns, he had none. He just said healthy relationships shouldn't need constant problem talks. I countered that they also shouldn't involve lying about emergencies to scam money. After 2 hours of this nonsense, I was done. I took my watch, told him I never wanted contact again, and headed to my car. He grabbed my arm, saying we weren't done talking. I turned and said if he touched me again, our next talk would be with a cop present. He backed off, apologizing, saying he was just upset. At home, I called my parents, needing to talk to someone who knew me before Nate. My mom could tell I was shaken. I told her everything. She asked if I truly thought this behavior came out of nowhere or if I'd ignored red flags because I wanted the relationship to work. That hit hard because there were signs I'd brushed off as not worth fighting over. My dad asked what I'd do next. I said I wasn't sure. Part of me wanted to expose him publicly, part wanted to move on. He said moving on didn't mean accepting bad behavior, and that closure sometimes means ensuring consequences. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about Leela saying Nate bragged about cutting expenses to boost his savings. The same guy begging me for emergency cash was telling his new girlfriend he was financially responsible. Thursday morning, I woke to 6 texts from Nate, sent between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. The first apologized for grabbing my arm, swearing he'd never hurt me on purpose. The second blamed work stress and family pressure. The third said he still loved me and regretted how things went. The fourth admitted the Madrid trip was a mistake and that he was confusing his feelings for Leela with fear of commitment to me. He said seeing my pain made him realize he'd run from something good instead of fixing it. The fifth asked if we could try therapy or take a break to work on ourselves before deciding our relationship's fate. This guy, who dumped me via text and ran off with another woman, was now pitching reconciliation. I showed Chloe the texts. She noted they were all about what Nate wanted, with no regard for how his actions hurt me. Even his apologies were just excuses. Friday, my mom called, asking if I'd heard from Nate's parents. His mom had called her, worried about Nate acting off since his trip. My mom diplomatically said we'd broken up and suggested they ask Nate directly. His mom mentioned expecting to meet Leela soon, as Nate said he was dating a coworker who joined them for Sunday dinner. This guy was introducing his rebound to his family while texting me about therapy. He was lying to everyone. His parents thought he'd moved on. Leela thought they were serious. I was supposed to buy his regret, and his job was probing his relationship with Leela for policy violations. But the real kicker was Leela saying Nate asked his parents for help with an apartment deposit. The same parents who didn't know he'd been scamming me for thousands, while planning to leave me for someone who could boost his career. His lies were a house of cards, and he was scrambling to keep it standing. But I was done being his pawn. Sunday dinner with his parents was going to be spicy, especially since no one there knew the real Nate. Reddit, it was time for this fool to learn what happens when you play chess with someone who's been bankrolling your lies. Final update Reddit, I'm grinning ear to ear because this guy got exactly what was coming. You warned me to brace for the worst, and I thought I was ready, but this clown outdid himself. Here's the epic conclusion. Saturday night, I debated blocking Nate and moving on or doing something about his lies. Then Chloe called with news from her friend Lucas, the HR guy at a firm tied to Nate's company. A formal complaint had been filed about an employee breaking workplace rules on relationships and expense reports. Someone was tracking Nate's Madrid trip and his fling with Leela. His panic at our cafe meeting wasn't just about gossip. He was facing potential termination. Sunday afternoon, I drove to Nate's parents' house, knowing Leela would be there for their family dinner introduction. I didn't have a grand plan, just a need for everyone to know the truth about their darling son. His mom welcomed me warmly. She led me to the living room, where Nate and Leela were cozied up, his dad asking Leela about her job. Nate's face when he saw me was pure panic mixed with fury. His parents acted like everything was fine, saying it was great we could be friends post-breakup. I realized Nate hadn't told them we'd split just 2 weeks ago. They thought it was months ago, which explained their ease with Leela. I sat down and said there was confusion about the timeline. I explained that Nate dumped me via text at 3 a.m. 2 weeks ago and jetted to Madrid with Leela. Nate tried interrupting, saying I got the dates wrong, but I showed my phone, the breakup text, his Madrid stories with my watch, everything. Leela's face drained of color as she saw the proof. She realized Nate had lied about our entire relationship timeline. I told his parents about the fake emergencies he used to get money from me. The $700 for car repairs, $400 for the bachelor party, $350 for medical bills, $500 for their rent when his dad was supposedly unemployed. His dad's face turned purple, and he stood up. "What the hell are you talking about? I was never unemployed. We never needed rent help." His voice grew louder, and Nate sank into the couch. His mom asked about the medical bills, as Nate never mentioned any. When I showed the text about the bills, she shook her head, saying, "This isn't real." Leela mentioned Nate buying her parents pricey gifts before Madrid, a $350 scotch for her dad, a designer scarf for her mom. His mom asked how he afforded that when he'd begged them for $1,000 for an apartment deposit, claiming he was broke. She started yelling, "How could you lie to us like this?" His dad paced, furious. "So you've been taking money from everyone, from us, from her, to spend on some coworker?" Nate tried to speak, but his dad cut him off. "Don't you dare talk right now. We raised you better." His parents are old school strict, and I could see this spiraling. His mom, now crying, asked how her son could lie to their faces while buying gifts for another woman's family. "What kind of person did we raise?" she repeated. Nate panicked, calling it all misunderstandings and bad timing. His dad exploded. "Misunderstandings? You stole from people who care about you. That's theft." Leela started asking questions, realizing every story Nate told her was different. His mom, voice rising, demanded, "Why did you need money for things that didn't happen? Why hide that you could afford fancy trips?" She was heartbroken. Instead of owning up, Nate attacked me for showing up and ruining his dinner, calling me obsessed and unable to move on. His dad roared, "You think she's the problem? She's the only one telling the truth." His mom stood, yelling, "I don't know who you are anymore. The son I raised wouldn't steal from his family." Nate claimed it wasn't stealing because he'd repay everyone eventually. His dad snapped, "When? You've been lying for months." Leela asked how much money he'd taken to fund their relationship. Nate said it was complicated and emotions don't follow money rules. His mom screamed, "Stop making excuses." The yelling lasted nearly an hour. His dad called him a thief. His mom cried, asking where they went wrong. Leela questioned if anything he'd told her was true. Nate just shrank as everyone saw his real character. His mom told him to leave and not return until he could tell the full truth. His dad said they were done giving him money until he repaid everyone. Leela said she couldn't face him and left without a word. His parents told him to grab his things and go. They were too disgusted to have him there. Nate followed me outside, saying I'd ruined his life over money misunderstandings. I told him his parents were right. He was a thief who got caught. Monday, Leela texted, thanking me and saying she was checking if she'd sent money meant for others. She felt sick knowing their relationship was built on stolen funds. Tuesday, AITA said Nate was on leave pending an investigation for policy violations and expense issues. Wednesday, my mom said Nate's mom was reviewing bank records. They tallied $5,200 in loans and gifts he never repaid. With the $2,800 he took from me, he'd scammed nearly $8,000 from people who trusted him. His parents are consulting a lawyer to recover their money. They're so angry they want real consequences. The desperate text stopped. The lies stopped. My phone's been quiet and it feels incredible. Nate wanted to find himself. Well, he found out what happens when you steal from loved ones thinking you're untouchable. Hope that Madrid trip was worth losing everyone who cared about you. Update: Nate moved back to his parents' house, unable to afford rent without a job. They're charging him rent and making him work part-time to repay everyone. His mom told mine they're tracking every penny he spends until he earns back trust. The guy who thought he was so slick is now 27, living under his parents' rules, working retail to pay back the money he stole. His dad makes him show receipts for every purchase.